We're halfway through Paris Fashion Week. We're actually getting to the end of Paris Fashion Week for us. We've only got a few streams left. But we're going to be talking about the Kenzo show, so it's a really exciting one. And in many ways it feels like a very sort of young, fresh brand because it's been so reinvented in the last couple of years. So it'll be really interesting to talk about. I've got a fabulous set of panellists with me who will introduce themselves, starting with you, Lainey.
I'm Lainey. I'm Head of Sales and do PR Business Development at Finch & Partners.
Morning, I'm Dilys Williams. I am the Director at Centre for Sustainable Fashion.
Hi, I'm Rosanna. I'm Head of Digital at Matthew Williamson.
Hi, I'm Natalie. Theo. I've got a site called The Fashion Chronicles and I'm a stylist at Dressapy.
So before we went live, we were all kind of having a little gossip about what we've really liked this season and what we thought's been good. What have been the standouts for all of you? What have you seen that's caught your fancy? I'll start with you, Lainey, because you're next to me.
I love a lot of what's going on in Paris this week, although there's a lot of black and white, which is why I'm excited for Kenzo, hoping it's not going to be so black and white.
Colour. Why do you think everyone's doing black and white?
I guess people follow trends automatically, don't they? There's like a natural progression that happens. It's winter, so if you're going to do black and white, I guess it's better to do it for autumn winter.
Do you think people are playing it safe this season a bit?
Possibly commercially.
Also, I think a lot of the designers, I mean the Paris designers, look at Yoji, look at Com, they're doing what they do best. And they've kind of gone back to it. And then they have highlight mad colours. I mean, with Yoji, it's very much about black and white, then suddenly kind of weird, strange colours in the middle.
And Com.
And Com as well, yeah.
Exactly.
So I think that's great. Having that contrast is fantastic. I think it's quite confident and bold. I think it's been a really confident week and a half.
Have you guys been impressed? What have you seen in Paris or anywhere else?
Do you know what I love about this season? First of all, starting in New York, the ladies of New York seemed to toughen up a bit and they suddenly got uber cool, but in a sort of in that New York glamour way, which was exciting to see. People are doing something a little bit different. And what I'm loving about Paris is that we've got all this beautiful sort of couture-like glamour which you can wear 24/7 by day or by night because everyone's doing their beautiful layering, they're doing those beautiful shapes and they've sort of pulled out the stops. It's just about looking fabulous and sort of having no excuse whatsoever to look fabulous. Whether you're wearing a pair of trousers and a sort of little sweatshirt style top, it's just gorgeous, it's texture. It may be black and white, but there's a little subtle play on prints. I think it's quite exciting. It may be quiet and there's a lot of grey, but what they're doing and how people are working with fabrics, I think is great, is the way we should be going. It sort of mirrors a bit what we're doing in technology, but you've taken it now and you've turned it into textiles.
It seems the excitement is subtler. You mentioned textures and things like that. That's what sort of struck me about this season. It's the collections I've been really excited by are the ones where it's not anything particularly in your face. It's when you look up closer, like Proenza is a really
you want to touch and it's sensual, so it might not be overtly sensual, but then when you get up close and personal you think, wow, actually I want a little bit more of this.
And you want to wear it.
Yeah, I mean it's just, I think it's quite exciting.
And if everyone's going a bit black, talking of the texture, one of my favourite shows, obviously apart from Matthew, Adam, was really interesting because he's such a colourist and he literally kind of showed that all the shades of black and all the possibilities of black, and he's so clever with his lace and his knowledge of fabric and embellishment and embroidery that actually a show that on the face of it, yes, he was looking into black, which he used to perhaps be scared of. It showed a lot of different looks within that one shade, I suppose. And then with regards to why designers are going for these darker hues, I did perhaps. Certainly in Milan, it's a sign of the times. And what with everything going on politically in Italy, I don't think you could possibly... I mean, there was Versace's Vunk, which was, I think, quite cheerful. But I don't think you could really send hot hues down the runway necessarily. You need to be in line with the times.
But it's clever because I think texture is the new colour. So
yeah,
I think, and why not? And there was a lot of black in the spring-summer collections. So, you know, I think, why not?
It's interesting. I want to go back to something you mentioned, kind of this idea of, everyday glamour and layering and looking fabulous every day, and that's what we're kind of seeing, because that's so true to what Kenzo do. It is a very sort of everyday brand.
Very much commercially brilliant. It's very much something you want to wear, you want to throw on. They come from a background of being commercial. They understand. They've been on a shop floor. So
let's talk about the duo, because that opening ceremony links. So obviously they started opening ceremony in 2002, moved to Kenzo in 2011. What do you guys think about what Carol and Roberto have done?
I think they've carried on the mood of it without sort of trying to change the whole thing and say, well, actually forget it because we're going to put our own stamp. It's not about putting your own stamp on this particular brand. You've got to be a little bit true to what he stood for and the
But I
brand
think they honour what he stood for.
Correct.
I think they've really moved it on.
And they're true to what they do as well.
Ref-
It very much fits with their own ethos. I mean, they know about collaborations because what they do is collaborations.
Yeah.
You know, they're doing. I mean, Rihanna's going to be in their store. I read the Rihanna River Island collection.
Yeah.
You know, they had the Kate Moss Top Shop. Then they do the Chloe Savini thing. I mean, they understand. You were saying something about Starbucks. Who were saying about Starbucks?
Yeah.
Coffee cups they have with their own thing. I mean, everything they do is about mixing with other people's
and
things.
that, for me, is when fashion is at its best. It's when it's collaborative and it also shows the strengths of everybody involved. And you've got lots of distinctive people involved in it, but you actually see those different parts and they're sort of strengthened by coming together.
They understand trends from seeing what other people are doing.
But you can still go back to a brand to find the things that you loved about it
Yeah.
always, but obviously so that it works with what you're doing now. And I think that's quite important.
You
And
get
I
a
think
feeling
they've
that they actually
maintained
loved the brand
Yeah.
before.
They're
it would be
really
a brand
savvy
they
from a
love.
business perspective, but it seems very authentic. They seem very
That's
democratic in their kind of outlook, so that if you can only buy a key ring or if you can buy the full Monty, it's all fine. You're not going to be sort of thinking, oh God, I wish. You actually feel good about whatever part of it you've bought.
And I think it's a lesson in how to revive a brand.
Yeah, let's talk
Yeah.
about it.
Absolutely.
I mean, they dropped the price point slightly. They've managed. There are so many kind of cult items now.
Yeah.
The tiger sweater. We were all talking about it earlier.
bag.
The pricing's
The-
great.
exactly. It's a street style dream. Everything that they've got going on, and that really, you know, became the hot ticket 4 seasons ago now. And the street style always gets tumbled and shared and goes viral, and it's really impressive. And like you say, I think they've been so successful in that because they know it from a buyer's perspective.
And now they have to move it on, and they will, because
Yeah.
they're very clever at that. Because if they don't, it's already something the high street's done.
gone.
It's kind of, you know, when especially when you tap into that street style thing, I think you've got to then, you know, be one step ahead, which you know those two will be. There's no
you
question.
know that they actually
They
have
get it.
relationships with people. They get to know people, and they get to know people who are good at doing different things, and then they draw
And
them
they know
in.
cool customers.
But they still give that fabulous flamboyant edge, which is what you'd expect from there. You don't want the sort of downtrodden street style look. They still
No.
have that flamboyance, which just gives that day glamour,
Yeah.
which I love. So.
Yeah.
And
And
then
when I said street style, I meant the street style
Yeah.
like Tommy Ton was taking lots of
Yeah.
photos, not necessarily kind of like jeans.
Grungy.
But then again, they
But that
do
is-
baseball caps and everything as well, don't they? So that's street style.
Well, they did that DKNY collaboration, didn't they? Which was very kind of Boy London, which was fantastic. I mean, it's just,
And that's
it
a
just
hard thing to
shows
pull
again.
off.
It's clever to pull off, you know, those long dresses.
Clever
It was
mapping,
like
yeah.
those Boy London, anyone who wore that stuff.
Love
which
Boy
for me
London,
was like,
so
oh,
much.
I love it.
But it's a lesson, you know,
Yeah.
we've seen these kind of brands that kind of explode really quickly over a really short amount of time, and you kind of, Kenzo, it's one of those ones you think like 3 years ago, I can't even remember having a conversation with anyone about Kenzo, whereas now, and
You just thought of the fragrance then.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Because it was always
But
a
it did go
quirky
through a
ad.
dark
Yeah.
period, and it wasn't true to the spirit. And Kenzo himself, when these guys came along and he saw what they were doing, he was overjoyed. Apparently, he sent them a letter after the first season saying,
Oh, really?
"At last, I see it again."
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the history of Kenzo as a brand and where it sort of begun and what the codes of Kenzo are.
He's very interesting because the other Japanese designers of his generation were so different. You know, Yohji Yamamoto, Izzy Miyake, they were doing such a different thing. Like, the core of him is doing what he does.
But he was the first Japanese designer in Paris.
Yeah.
And he had his own
set
shop
that
as
ball
well.
rolling, which is a huge...
And
Huge
he is
accolade.
actually very controversial because he kind of took the world to Place de Victoire in a way that Paris wasn't used to. But he did it without it looking at all souvenir or touristy. He made it look beautiful for Paris, but completely at odds with what Paris was doing. Yeah.
It's all about fun.
Yeah, and that's what they've achieved.
And that's what they do now.
This is covetable fun.
It's
Lim always says that she wants people, if the runway is a live, desirable show, and you need that, I need that factor. So covetability was at the core for him and still is now.
I'd like to talk about this idea of the it piece because I'm really intrigued by it because, you know, we had that explosion of the it bag and I think people got very comfortable with that and it became a bit of a fashion cliche that everyone talked about. But it seems, and I think it probably is something to do with the recession, this idea of, you know, people trying to take a punt on one key item. But this idea of, you know, an it sweater or even like we've had it pairs of jeans, you know, like the current Elliot ones with the stars and that kind of thing. Where did that come from? Is that the street style thing?
Clever branding.
Yeah.
I think with clothes you have to be a little more careful with it because you can do it for a season and then, as I said earlier, you have to move it on. I think with a bag you need to have the real one. You know, the fake version of it's not going to work. Whereas you will wear the Zara version of that kind of jungle print jumper and it will still look cool. So they have to then be on to the next version of that.
I think with your it pieces with that, you've got to be clever at creating hype. You've got to be clever at sort of planting that seed and the sort of mass consciousness out there. I think it's clever marketing because you could look at some it pieces.
Well, their social media is phenomenal.
Yeah, you could look at it pieces and think, okay, but
Exactly.
you create that madness about it and suddenly everyone wants it. Whether you look good or not, it doesn't actually really matter.
But I think we crave those iconic pieces because there's so much stuff around us. We're bombarded with more stuff. That actually, if something comes up to the surface as being the most beautiful thing, we crave
There's a
it.
safety
It's
in it,
edited
isn't
for
it?
us. So we
Choice
somebody's
editing.
gone and edited it quietly behind the scenes without us knowing. And everyone loves a bit of leopard print, for God's sake.
Well,
Let me tell you, any high street
Most
retailer,
people.
I can tell you now, it's the one thing that just flies off the shelves, whether it's a shoe or a bikini or a top-to-toe onesie.
It doesn't stop, does it?
It
You
doesn't
keep thinking
stop.
every season the
It'll
animal
never go
stories
away.
are going to stop.
So
in the
you can
next
make it
season.
fluo, you can throw skulls on it, you can put flowers on it, and it's always going to sell.
and a good little it piece myth of the leopard print kind is the Louis Vuitton one, and rumour has it in the industry that wasn't selling, the leopard print scarf.
Yeah.
And basically a stylist and the PR team sent it out to key celebrities who they wanted to see wearing it. And then I'm sure we all remember that week when everyone was wearing it. There was Kate Moss, there was Keira, there was Sienna, and it was a sellout shortly after. I remember trying to chase it down. And
That was probably Finch and Partners that sent
Just
them
an
out.
obsession with that.
There we go. Yeah.
So Dilys, would you advise, when you're working with young brands now, and I guess this works for you, Rosanna, as well, do designers aim to create an it piece now? Because,
I think people aim to create an identity to their work that is something that goes beyond just the cut and the make of it, the whole ethos of their brand, and it has to be epitomised in pieces because that's what designers are making. So I think pulling lots of elements together, and that when you're talking about the difference between the sort of the real and the virtual, part of that is understanding how to sort of traverse the landscape between the things that are real and the things that you make and how you communicate them, what you say about them. And I think the role of the designer in communicating something that has been very personal often has really changed and moved. And I think a lot of the new designers are really understanding the importance of that communication as part of the creativity, instead of thinking, oh God, I've got to think about how I'm going to talk about this, or I've got to think about where it's going to go. Actually, it's part of the creative process, and I think you see that with these guys. The creative process is thinking about everything to do with the texture of the cloth, but also what somebody's going to feel like when they're wearing it, what it means to them, and I think that's what fashion is about. It's about being right on a person at a particular time. So I think that changes how designers work a lot.
There's also that filtering into that, because sometimes I don't know from a designer point of view if they think this is going to be my it piece, but I always explain to someone, if you go to the couture collections, all of the fashion editors are sitting there. They come from different publications with different styles catering to different women, and it's really quite crazy that the day after a show, when everyone's got to scrabble about and reserve their look to shoot, all of those fashion editors are going to want the same look that's for completely different, and it's I can't explain that. Like you say to sort of somebody who doesn't work in fashion, there's just a feeling, and I don't know how to explain that feeling, and you know that everyone's feeling it because we all have different styles and we're all catering to different platforms, but you all want the same
When we
look.
see the show, we'll probably all
Bizarre,
shout
and
about
it's
the
just
same
such
thing.
a weird, and it just clicks. So
But as you say, it's almost that mixture as well of understanding how people live. Because you were talking about, you can wear it at 24/7, and I think designers that get it right and get those it pieces, the ones that really think about the economics of it, they think about the art of it, they pull lots of different disciplines together, and fashion actually does bring economics together, it brings design together, it brings maths together, and when those things come together in a good way, you actually create something that is right for the time.
yeah, it's that one piece that every fashion editor publication can translate their way to fit into everyone else's different lives.
It's like we were saying the other day, even in London now, which everyone used to think was so creative, I mean it still is. They used to just see it. They used to just see it as this creative hub, but no commercial sense, nothing ever sold. people used to think that designers like Gareth P would create these artistic sculptures but never sold anything. Rumour had it. And yet now everyone is so commercially savvy. And I think the it piece it's also to do with the retailers. I know that for us, Net-a-Porter commissioned this limited edition grey sweater, but it had embellished crystals all over the collar. And it's been a complete sellout. So I think that the retailers are also aware of this trend of an it piece.
This is very much, particularly
and they're
online.
working with the
With
brands.
online, they have to be even more. They buy tighter, but will buy pieces they know that are going to sell. Also, things people are going to search for. So that it's very different to when you had everything hanging on a rail solely, because then you'd go through every single piece on the rail. Now it's, you know,
Online
people need to be searching for that crystal jumper from Matthew Williamson or that jumper from Kenzo or whatever, you know, and you know that you're going to get people coming onto your site. Maybe then they're there and they buy other things.
It's the best research tool that.
And they're able to buy 4 pieces from a brand. You know, before they couldn't. You couldn't put 4 pieces in a department store, even a boutique, really. You had to represent it properly. So you can buy heavily into the best pieces. And that's why it's even more, you know, it's more applicable now than it used to be.
This goes back to this idea of editing, which we talked about before, and it got me thinking about, you know, when an it piece comes up, there's a part of it where you think, is it those editors sitting there and they all look at it and want it, or is it the buyers and PRs, you know, knowing what to edit? Because a store like Net-a-Porter, you know, it's as much a magazine and a whole lifestyle sort of scenario as it is a shop. You know, you can go on there to be educated about fashion. They have profiles on different designers, and it got me thinking about who actually decides what is brilliant.
There was a thing about who's more powerful, Natalie.
Yeah,
You have to actually listen to
Exactly.
the great thing that the web's given us and all these e-commerce sites, you have to listen to your consumer, and let me tell you, you'd be surprised what they talk. So for example, I found it quite fascinating on our site that I was merely doing a little sort of new in, and I posted on Facebook red shoes. Women love red shoes. I didn't know that. They got obsessed with it, and I laugh, and every now and then I said, let me put a few more red shoes up and see what happens. So, and they go crazy for it, and then you start to, apart from editing the trends, apart from giving the advice and saying we think you're going to be like these pieces, apart from looking at what sold last season and taking a punt on what you're going to think sells next season, I think the web is so exciting because you sit and you watch those ladies how they shop, and you listen to them, and you can see what they're looking at. You can see what they're just looking at and maybe fantasizing about, and then you can see what they're looking at and buying. And I think it works. It's it's actually a 3-way conversation. So
this is a huge
communal edit.
It's a huge question, but who's in control then? Is it the shopper? Because on one degree I think we'd all agree the internet gives people a voice. You know, it gives a shopper a voice to be able to say, I don't like this, I like this, or I like it but I'm not going to buy it, etc., etc. Is it the designers themselves, or is it buyers?
Social media.
So buyers is now press as well, because obviously, you know, Net-a-Porter magazine is, and also their magazine is incredibly powerful. I mean, even when you go much lower, you know, or lower down the market to say John Lewis, their Editions magazine is more powerful than Grazia in terms of it gets out to more people. So,
But it can still go back to
and
the
it's
designer.
direct to the customer,
And
that's their buyers.
But I think it's the intersection of all those things. I don't think it's not going to be one or the other. And I think in some instances something will be more influential. But it's when those things kind of come together that it kind of And I think sometimes it is an intuitive thing. You can't.
Yeah.
It's not a mathematical process. Fashion isn't mathematical.
That's why we do
process.
it.
I know. I often get asked, like, how do you decide what product goes on? So I say, well, is this list, and then I said the other day, and then the last one at the bottom is instinct. So someone said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, it's that moment where you're sitting at a show and everyone wants the same piece. I said, it's just instinct, and you just go for it.
Social media gives brands the power to slightly dictate the it piece, for example, and you know, subliminally message in and perhaps push one product, and all of a sudden the messaging is the designer and the brand does have more power, which is a really exciting time to be working at a brand due to all of digital. It's much more, I think perhaps it's more balanced now, as we were saying. The buyers and press have kind of balanced out a bit, and the consumer has more power.
But actually the consumer's like the mob in a Charles Dickens novel, because if they don't like that piece, they're not going to react. You can flaunt it and flog it as much as you like, but if it just doesn't click, it's a little, not always, but you can manipulate it, but it is a little bit of that wonderful mob mentality.
We mentioned what Kenzo are doing online, and tell us a little bit about it, Rosanna, and why you think it's impressive. And
Yeah, well, they one thing which I loved is they worked with Quentin Jones, who has been on panels before,
she's
and
fabulous.
she does amazing animations, and she's great. So they do these great fashion films, and they just had one come out last week for their resort collection, which was so bright and fun and covetable. But then they've also, I mean, what they did this morning on Instagram was a lesson in how brands should Instagram their show. It started 2 hours before the show. Beautiful imagery, backstage bars, and showing things like your Starbucks customized cups, but it didn't give away any of the final looks. And I think sometimes designers might feel, right, to get the hype, I'm going to sacrifice the wonder of the show because I just feel that maybe that's what I should be doing, and I'll reveal it. But it's not necessary, and actually the response on Instagram was just as strong, just through showing, little glimpses.
It's far more confident actually to work that way, and I think we do. We're almost sort of pornographic with showing everything about every facet of ourselves, and designers feel as if they need to, but actually the ones that are most confident and have got self-belief don't realise they don't need
to. And they've got a huge, they hit 300,000 followers on Facebook last night. Huge following, and I doubt, unlike a lot of brands, I doubt that was paid for. And then I also think, I expect it was organic rather than Facebook advertising. And then I think they're just very savvy. Susie Bubble was their backstage reporter for them this morning, and I mean, we all know that she's right at the centre of things digitally. So it's I think that's been integral to the revival of the brand that they've managed to pull off. So
it's fun.
It is, isn't it?
It's really cheery,
fun, and that's what you want.
I have a little bag by Kenzo. Whenever I wear it, you just feel really good, and it's just a black bag, but it's got this enough detail on it that people are like, oh, that's really cool, and it's kind of it's all smiley, and it makes you feel good about yourself.
You see, it's never just a black bag.
And also the shop assistants in their stores are so educated about the brand. It's like a really positive experience buying anything from Kenzo, whether it's from them directly or whether it's off matches. There's such a buzz to it. And
the guys that work in the store are part of their community. You go online and you see pictures, you get little profiles of the different guys and where they come from, what they're doing, and you feel as if they are part of the community. It's not just a little branding exercise. It kind of feels, there's a lot of it that feels authentic and genuine.
Should we see what they've got on offer for this season? So this is our opening look, which goes back to what we were saying about black and white.
Amazingly uncolourful.
But then you've got those really glamorous gold pants that you can wear by day or by night, and you're rocking a very beautiful glamorous day look.
Their footwear is brilliant as well. I know we've talked a bit about something like the It sweaters and stuff, but some of those little pumps that they've done on the boots with that zip up the front, it's so wearable and easy.
It's cute.
And we should also talk about the fact they showed in Pity as well for the men's, which I thought was really savvy.
And that collection was influenced by the sky.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was there for it. It was so beautiful.
Really?
Yeah, it was incredible.
Nice.
It was amazing. It was a real sign of the might of them all, because they had all these models and they came out and they all stood at the end. So they walked around and then stayed on the kind of runway space, and it was in the market hall area of Florence, which I thought was very apt because they are so about commerce and selling, and it was quite bizarre to go to a show past all these sort of men selling these knockoff bags and spices and stuff, and then you get in there and I was like, this is about commerce. But all the models stayed there and stood at the end, and it was just so kind of like, this is the might of the new Kenzo. It was brilliant. It was amazing. Beautiful.
Do we have any background info about this collection?
We don't. I know that the music was MIA, so I'm guessing it's very cheery. But nothing on the inspiration yet.
So somewhere in the history of Kenzo on the web, when you read up on him, they talk about how I don't think anyone technically introduced the concept of layering, but they often reference the fact that was very key to his collections in the 70s, which is...
And mixing fabric, obviously. What do you think of the metallics that they've done?
I love them.
I love the metallics because they're not as sort of cheap looking metallic as sometimes metallics can be. They're quite a rich. They're a little bit Dolce & Gabbana, that gold opulence.
And it's like you were saying earlier, they're textured metallic.
You want to touch it.
And it looks expensive. I
quilted.
guess people
It
invest,
looks quilted.
they want
They
to.
look
But
quilted.
it looks so wearable. It looks very,
You're not
very
scared of
opulent,
a
but on the
gold.
other hand, you could kind of wear that on any occasion.
That brocade and the jacquard that they did in the sort of the greeny colours as well, that looked so fun, but it also, you could tell it was a little bit pricey, and it goes back to that idea of the branding that you get on an It sweater is people know it's Kenzo and they start to recognise it, and it makes you feel sort of like you're buying into something.
But the jacquard's a slightly more serious version of what they did for the summer, because they were they did all the little skirts and stuff in the jungle prints.
Yeah, so far it does look a little bit more serious.
It does. This is really grown up.
But you can completely see some of those shoes and tops and jackets that are going to be channeled through onto the high street.
Is
You
that
can
leather
completely
coming
see
through
it.
on the
Yeah,
arms?
that's like a leather sleeve, isn't it? That's gorgeous.
It's kimono
Beautiful, I
sleeve.
love it.
It's great. It is quite serious, actually.
The shoes look beautiful.
Yeah, they look like they're they're echoing the shoe they did with that zip up the front, aren't they? I was expecting to see more
That's
sort of
cool.
obvious
That's
colour and
beautiful.
I think that's super cool.
and that's very
That's actually
Kenzo,
quite sexy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's still
There's
quite
the,
sexy.
there's the, what is it
It's
a
like
print or is
it
it
looks like a brocade.
I think it's a
it's a
brocade,
brocade.
yeah.
That's beautiful.
And there's a flash of metallic in almost every look
yeah.
at the moment,
Yeah.
which is really there's a definite narrative behind it all.
And I like
One is
this little
that
split hem skirt. Well, it looks like it's wrapped over, but short in the front. And
We've seen a lot of that
split,
wrap
yeah.
over skirt,
That
but you
kind
can
of flipped.
it's that layering, it's
Yeah.
easy layering. It makes you look like you've. But there's an eye print which you can see is going to be.
Yeah,
That's
that was
gonna
on
be
the
so,
invitation, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was that on the-
amazing? Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the invitation.
But also
and I
it's
think it was
commercial.
on the duvets
so
that they have
commercial.
on the front row.
Yeah.
Not the duvets, they had like these
Eiderdowns or
blankets
something,
to
yeah.
keep everyone warm.
Cute.
Because it's in
They're so lovely.
a disused shopping.
Did people
That's-
nick
yeah.
them and take them out? You
Yeah.
can
Yeah, everyone
and
took them.
flasks.
They gave them out at this pity
So you
thing,
can take
and
them.
everyone picked them up with them when they left.
You
Like,
have to.
they're just amazing.
Yeah,
they're so beautiful. And they've
They'll
got a
be
big sun on
collector's
them.
items.
Yeah, it's over
I
my
love
guest bedroom
these.
in my flat.
Those are cool.
And Lou, again, it's like you were saying about the menswear show this morning. This is in an unused shopping mall.
Yeah.
I think
Which
it's a
Elvia
shopping mall
mentioned
or a
thinking about
department
turning into a
store.
hotel.
It's called-
as well, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's the.
I saw it on Twitch, Samaritan or
It's
something. It must
Samaritan,
have some
yeah.
reference to it. I don't know what it is.
I think that's quite witty. That it's very
Yeah.
much kind of.
The commercial,
Yeah.
And it's
reference.
quite witty as well, 'cause it's almost the opposite to what Kenzo did when he opened up in the sort of Gigi part of Paris,
Yeah.
taking something that
Yeah.
was unusual there, and they've taken something really beautiful and opulent and kind of turned it upside down and taken it into a marketplace. Or
I
whatever.
think it's so important where the shows are and that whole
Yeah.
pre-experience, and you sit down in the blanket and the flask. It's just part of the madness, and it is a luxury to be able to go to the shows. It's incredible, and then you go and you just fall into it from the moment you get your invitation. You're sort of waiting to think, what's this going to be like? It's great. So is that a knit? Is that
It is a
knitted
buyer's
piece?
dream, this collection,
It's
isn't it?
totally a buyer's dream
Yeah.
because you don't have to be minute for it. So you can get your wealthy customers in who aren't necessarily
It's democratic.
size zero.
It's very it's democratic.
But there's
fun.
enough pieces in there that young fashion kids that really
Yeah.
want Kenzo will be
Yeah,
able to.
but that's a
buy.
fab dress. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just a really.
And it's going to be very flattering with that little nipped-in waist and that.
It reminds me a lot of what we're seeing. Obviously, it's a completely different aesthetic. It's not as minimal and clean, but that kind of Acne type
Yes.
brand where you
It's true.
can buy into a bit and it works on all different levels.
Beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Lots of separates too for the buyers.
Yeah.
Not what I
that box.
expected at all, though.
What
You
were
know,
you
everyone's
expecting?
doing
What
this
were you-
I was expecting
shoulder.
much more colour.
Much more colour.
Yeah, and it's gone more grown up. It's more.
It has,
It's
yeah.
a proper serious collection now. You know.
But I think people are taking them really seriously.
Exactly, yeah.
Completely.
So they should.
But it's interesting because so often, a brand that is so commercial gets sort of dogged by these accusations where people think it's not interesting. I think it's very easy to kind of lose favour very quickly.
And
and
that's
people
why
get-
you have to keep.
But it's always, I always say this, we're so demanding, the fashion industry, we always want something new and you've got to push the boundaries. You can't technically do that all the time, but you can do it quietly and you have to think of the commercial element.
But they've brought together, I mean, obviously they've got some great people working with them and you kind of, you can see
That's
that and
beautiful.
hopefully that will be what keeps it fresh all the time because they're bringing different people working with really good people and they're almost kind of hosts, they're almost kind of like, they sort of hold the party and they bring people in and I think that's
so
something
lovely.
that's
That's
part of
diversity.
Party.
I think that's part of the
But their
new
prints
kind of
are
designer
great.
as well, that you kind of pull things together from different places.
Well, that's the Henry Holland model, isn't it? Like, because Henry, he started as a journalist, he did his T-shirts, and then that's been his success is pulling in the people that can do the different elements of his business and help, whether it's physically helping him produce a collection or whether it's wearing it or and it is a model that we're seeing and it's
like a
more
group
interesting one as
collaboration.
well, yeah.
And actually, I think on so many levels that's more healthy because I think the whole thing of a named designer and having the pressure of having to say that they're doing everything and being the name in the limelight is really hard. And actually, if you are open about this, fashion is a set of people working on things together. And if you celebrate that, actually, you're honouring yourself as the designer probably more than if you're trying to kind of have some facade that this is me that did this and nobody else.
And also
That's
the
gorgeous,
quantity
fine.
that needs to be produced and the expectation to do something, you know, unique, whether it's a little collaboration or something, you can't do that by yourself anymore. So I think that it's a really refreshing model. For me, it's a very modern way to run a business, and not you said it's, you know, the perfect way to revive a house, but it's also in a way the perfect way to run a fashion label.
Yeah. Instead of a hierarchy, it's a kind of flatter approach.
I think the prints are amazing because they're not so in your face.
Beautiful.
Really beautiful.
But they still stand out.
And I love some of that shape. It's a kind of, it reminds me, there's something a bit Proenza about it, but it is, you know, it seems
Everyone's
so
got that
relevant. And
All the girls are
curved
Asian.
shoulder.
Am I right in saying that? The
They
last 3 have been Asian girls.
There,
might have been,
Hannah
yeah.
was walking. There have been a few.
they've had Lindsay and Han as well, yeah.
I think that
That looked like your jumpsuit you were wearing last night, Lainey. Sorry.
great, isn't it?
It's a personal discussion. Oh, did you have a sneaker?
I know, I had a sneak preview. I got it out last night and sent it over to Paris.
I think the
Getting in the mood. Sorry, Rosanna.
I think the fact that the prints are perhaps a bit more muted than we've been seeing is again good for buyers, because it means that we're going to be able to have, they'll be trans-seasonal.
Yeah.
And what we've been seeing so much throughout Fashion Month is this aim for pieces, and consumers love it, where you don't have to, it's not going to be, it's the contrast to the it piece, where you can buy something and wear it this time in a year and mix it perhaps with something new, and people won't look at that and think, oh yeah, that was AW13 Kenzo. I mean, quite honestly though, I don't think shoppers get like that anymore. It's
Yeah,
just-
we
it's
even if
behind
it does look
us
like
to have that
AW13,
attitude.
You don't really,
that's fine.
I've
Yeah,
forgotten by
exactly.
then. Believe me, by AW sort of 15, I've forgotten.
When
We've
it all
talked a
goes
lot-
into one.
We've talked a lot about this idea of, you know, designers approaching things in a very trans-seasonal way and
Yeah.
trying not to sort of get too sort of caught up in it. And I think that's what's really interesting with Kenzo is the stand-up pieces, like, you know, like a particular sweater, yes, people will recognise the season of that, and that's quite interesting that they make that stand-up piece. But some of their, you know, the skirts or the printed
they're
jackets, you know, they could be from any season. You know,
Exactly.
they keep
Seasons has changed anyway, because obviously, I mean, things like Outnet, it's really respectable to sell your stuff on Outnet and to buy on Outnet. So that's last season or even the season before or whatever, or they make it specifically for it. So we're all a bit more flexible on that.
The good thing about this is
Yeah.
if you're a little bit prince-phobic, you can manage
Yeah.
it.
You can manage it,
You
yeah.
know,
Dip your toes in.
you can really dip your toes in and not scare yourself too much.
It's this idea of a savvier shopper though, isn't it? You know, I think actually women don't like to look like they've shopped the look too much. They like to look like and that's what Kenzo do quite well, is because even though it's so accessible, it is so commercial, there's a vibe to some of the pieces of, you know, I discovered this myself, which I think is really interesting. They've
And
cultivated
they're
that
wearing
really
it
well.
rather than it wearing them. They've kind of chosen, this is me rather than I'm trying to be something that's
And I think
Kenzo.
with his colour palettes, which are quite low-key at the moment, and the prints, you can mix as much as you like without it sort of looking too much.
Well, you could
like
put that
too
skirt
crazy.
with a white shirt
Yeah.
and wear it with a pair of black boots, and I would wear something like that because I don't really wear any colour, but then also you could put that with, Susie would wear that with like amazing trainers and a really cool hat and a printed top and like an amazing bag, and
You
it's
could wear that jacket with a full-length ball gown, you'd look amazing. To go and buy the milk
Oh, wow.
in the morning,
On a Sunday.
On a Sunday, you know.
it's incredible. I think it's trousers. Is that
Great
trousers or a
trousers.
skirt?
Trousers.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So those look like they're fringed metallic.
Those you do need the body for though.
The accessories
Those
are
aren't for
clever in
anybody.
this though.
No,
Put a heel on there, you're okay.
yeah, they look good on you.
But those jackets look very,
They
you know,
are
they
cool.
could work on
they're
lots of
beautiful.
different shapes.
Great glasses too.
Yeah, I was going to say the glasses, that's it.
So it looks like it's got something on that fabric, like it's kind of fringed.
Yeah. But again, it's very grown up glamour, but it's cool.
Yeah, but not too
Cool.
sort of
No, you're not
serious.
too like stuffy. Well, obviously, I wouldn't have hated
I'm
it
quite
if it was stuffy.
interested in
It'd
the
be wrong,
trousers
wouldn't it?
underneath that
It's
skirt.
very wrong.
But that's something
They
we've
look
seen
like
a
they're
lot.
very cool. Those trousers look like a winner if they are trousers underneath the skirt.
That looks very Kenzo.
There we go. There's some colour.
There we go.
Kenzo.
Tick that box.
Knitted. Do you think that's knitted?
Yeah.
But it's nice to
Oh,
see them
lovely,
play.
because
It's
the
nice
jacket
to play
does
with
look
the
as if
archive.
it's
Structured.
It's a structure, as if it's a tailored fabric.
They need
As
to
it
put
might
sort of
be
texture
wool or
notes
wool or
next to these
something,
now.
or-
They need to get, come on, we need them to put.
That's so original Kenzo, that though, isn't
That
it? Which is so
print,
nice
yeah.
to see. You know, it's so
I love this dress, this shape that they've done.
beautiful.
Yeah, and it looks very different in the different
prints, yeah.
Well, it's very oriental in a sense. You know, it's
It's
Like the
Yeah.
sash
about
of the, it's like
archive.
the
Yeah, it looks
sash
like
of the kimono.
Exactly, and
It's
the same
so
with those
flattering.
jackets.
That's beautiful.
The
That colour.
shoulders the shoulders
That
we're seeing
shoulders.
here are just what we were talking about the other day, of this idea of the woman who is feminine but fierce, and she's strong, and I mean, look at that. If it's a mini skirt, but it's the opposite of you don't feel
it's not clingy and tight
exactly
and
and tottering about, and yeah, she looks like she could go, I don't know, hold a press conference or something without wearing a power suit.
That's really right. Yes, it is very powerful, but it's round and so it's soft and powerful at the same time.
These prints look quite sort of African.
But that's the tradition of travel and culture in Kenzo. So.
And that's where,
you win a
there's the sweater. That's it. Order now,
That's going to be everywhere.
It is, isn't it?
Cute, it's cute.
We shouldn't look at it for too long because we're so bored of it.
That's a timeless piece as well. It's fab. But that thing, yes, of the traveller, and Kenzo was, the original iconic fashion traveller, and these guys are as well.
And they do a different theme of the shop every season. Doing a different country.
But what fun to be able to do that with a collection each season. Just think, let's go wild, and that's gorgeous.
The inspiration is this idea of the eye of the beholder, and all the makeup was inspired by India, and this kind of idea of a surrealist eye print. But I think with going back to the idea of travel, look at them. Should we give them a clap?
They look so lovely.
And she's wearing a dress from the collection, isn't she?
And he's wearing a jumper. That looks a bit of an iconic jumper he's got on there.
Oh. And that's the finale look.
But this idea of travel, it's a very modern fashion idea, isn't it, in a sense? Because, we always get stuck in the four cities, but if you think about it, fashion is consumed and viewed and bought by the world. And I think it's this idea of them being about travel, it's taps in even more to this idea of them being so modern and so forward thinking, because they're fully aware that people from all different countries will engage with their brand, and
also they are
and also
countries. He's Chinese, Peruvian, and she's Korean, and they're in the States and met in California.
And also people from all on the opposite of that, just because everyone's from all a different country, there's not that sort of stuck cliche that just because you come from here you're going to like this type of piece. You'll find that a lot of women are going for the same pieces because it's just become a whole transcontinental language of I want that it piece.
And I think the inspiration is interesting, the eye of the beholder. So obviously we think of it as beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I think maybe that encapsulates what this collection, because we were saying it's so wearable, there are so many separates, it's very well styled, but we were saying that you could kind of take out little bits.
What you want.
Yeah, it's that notion of wear it your own way, which is so current.
Well, you're absolutely right, and it almost becomes other people's collections instead of just being that's the Kenzo collection. It's going to go in lots of different directions, so to lots of different people who are going to perceive it in different ways. So actually, the eye of the beholder is a perfect explanation for it. Actually,
so now they need to add the next level. Everyone needs to send their pictures of them wearing their pieces and how they've done it.
Crowdsource that social media.
That's our tip to them. We're sorting everything out for them, strategy. I don't want to be a voice of pessimism, but I do have a question. How do you think they will stay current? Because as much as the clothes are incredible, but they're not, it's not sort of fashion that's going to move mountains.
I think that they've shown how they can stay current by being so different to what they did last season, which already received a very good response. And people were, it was a surprising choice because people didn't necessarily, there's a line of designers that could have got that job. And I think, they went for retailers essentially. I know they had a collection, but essentially they were retailers, they understood the customer. So I think by doing this that's so different to the spring summer, to me it's very different. I mean, when you break it down,
but it's very similar to a lot of what's been happening, which is gives them versatility. The shapes are quite similar to what everyone else has been doing.
If they'd had the lion jumpers in there, I'd be like, okay, this is going to be tricky, and I think it was a valid question, but actually they've shown that they're one step ahead, and everyone will be doing those kind of jackets.
And they've sat themselves outside the fashion wheel a little bit, haven't they?
I think that confidence that they seem to kind of ooze somehow, and that they do know their customer, so they can be confident.
And they still see their customer. They still have that shop in New York. That's not shop. And as I said, they're doing the Rihanna River Island thing. I mean, so they're really understanding both levels of the market, which you need to understand now.
Well, should we give them a round of applause to wrap things up again? Thank you, guys.